Part2, Ray Columbus.
Because it was the psychedelic era, and I was anti-drug. I was addicted to cigarettes, which has nearly killed me 4 times now. But and I couldn't even give those up, and that's why I never got into dope or marijuana or hashish or LSD or anything, because I thought, hell, I can't even give up cigarettes. I got totally addicted to those when I was a kid. So, and even though I gave it up in the late 70s finally to stop my kids getting caught, but they did anyway, it still comes back to haunt me. And, the major stroke I had 19 months ago was really because I was a heavy smoker. And I'd smoke up to 80 a day. I was a total addict. I admit it. I didn't know it killed you, and no one did at the time. By the time we found out, it was too late. I can't understand people today, these young people, gorgeous young girls, smoking, which just for what it does to your face with wrinkles and stuff alone, takes the oxygen out of your wrinkles and makes them dry out. That's enough to make any woman or any vain man, and I still am a vain man, I'd give it up and not start. But one thing it did for me was kept me off other drugs. I've never even tried marijuana or any other sort of drug. I now take a drug cocktail for my health just to live. If I want to keep breathing, I've got to make sure I stop this bleeding of the brain thing that I've had. And I hope it'll be reversed one day by a treatment I'm doing. But meanwhile, I take my drug cocktail. My American neurosurgeon at Mount Sinai in Manhattan said to me, if you want to live, you've got to take this every day.
Because how come you went to the States? Why?
For that?
No, for like, so it's what, 67 and...
66.
66. So, and because you're huge here, you're huge in Australia, but you decide, and the band split.
Well, I was really crestfallen when the drum and bass player left the Invaders. And they really did it because they couldn't manage their money, because Billy was an integral part of the Invaders, and as was Jimmy, because we were a group. We were all for one and one for all, like the Musketeers, so it wasn't a lead singer with the band at all, and it was very important. So to answer your question, I know I get verbal diarrhea on everything, but when the group split up, well, they didn't split up. Billy and Jimmy left to join Max in Australia because they wanted me to take the group and move there. And I said, we are Kiwis, we are New Zealanders, we live here and commute there. We are overseas stars there. As it turns out, a lot of people thought we were Australian stars, but I actually quite liked the fact that we got treated big time in Australia. And so we kept our residency at the Shirley or wherever by that time in Auckland. So every time we went on tour, and we did, I think, 5 tours of Australia, I would get Larry's Rebels to take our place, which helped make them famous. They had our fans who went along to see them, and they won them over because they were a great group, terrific group. And Larry's a great singer. And so, it was a win-win thing. And then we would come back to Auckland and they would get other work and it would all be prepared. They'd know when we were coming back. And so it was a win-win thing for me and as the leader of the group. And I watched the business side of it. And I could manage my money, so could Wally, so could Dave. I couldn't understand why Jimmy and Billy couldn't. But anyway, that's their problem, whatever.
But during this time, you're trying to go to the States anyway, though, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
You're applying for visas.
Yeah, we tried because...
And just couldn't get in.
Well, She's a Mod was bubbling under the charts. I think it got 104 in the Billboard charts or Cashbox charts. I can't remember which now. So it was bubbling under. I think Billboard has the bubbling under. And Till We Kiss got the biggest rating ever, so yet later, but this was before that. No, it was the time Billy left. And Jimmy. Till We Kiss got a best bets rating in Cashbox and a top 60 rating in Billboard. This is pre-Bee Gees, pre-Easy Beats, pre-Olivia Newton-John. I mean, it was before anyone. A little group from New Zealand gets that. I mean, that sort of rating normally would guarantee anyone, American or whatever, to have a smash hit, at least to be like number 60 in the charts or 40 in the charts in America. Yeah, well, it helped me tremendously that all of us guys, we had all got married, and it played into my favour in a way because my first wife, Lavon, she had an American father, and she could claim her citizenship, and I could get a green card. So, and I had always promised her when I married her that a few months earlier that, because she had never seen her father since she was about 4, that we would go to the States and find him. So that was a mission for me. Born in the year of the horse, you know, we're gentlemen and stuff, Prince Galahad or whatever. But anyway, I meant it sincerely. But when the invaders couldn't get in with me, we always knew, Lavon and I knew that she could claim her citizenship and I could tag along. So we did that. And she eventually got to see her father. It was about 69, I think, in the end. So it wasn't while we were actually there, but she made contact with them and other members of the family on the East Coast. But it made a big difference. And but I really missed the invaders. I particularly missed the soul and essence of the invaders, which is Dave Russell.
Because how did you find the Americans? So you arrived, where did you go? San
Francisco.
San Francisco. In 1966.
67, the start of the psychedelic era.
Is, you know, of all the places to be in the world,
It was phenomenal.
That's probably one of them.
And, well, it was amazing. I mean, psychedelia actually started where I actually lived, which was in Santa Clara County. Psychedelia started there and moved up 40 miles away, moved up to San Francisco, but it was all the Bay Area anyway, so it was very catch-all sort of communities. But I was lucky because I got a lot of publicity there as this British act from down under, you know, because no one knew where New Zealand was actually. I often called, you know, was called an Australian, and I railed against it. So they would say British act in the end, and so I ended up producing African-American groups. I was doing quite a lot of stuff. I ended up writing a lot more than I did in New Zealand previously because I was on tour so much. I ended up being on my own, writing in isolation, which I had never really done before, but I quite enjoyed it, and writing the entire thing, music, everything. So the piano stuff that I used to play with the Invaders, side of stage, off stage, when we were doing 5-set stuff before we became famous. I'd learned how to play 12-bar blues in almost every key, C, D, E, F. When I'd use the club hand effect, I'd move my fingers onto the next key and keep them the same, and I'd learn how to place and get the chord. And because the guys would never help me, and I wanted to learn guitar, but the two guitarists said, no, you're doing all the business for the group. You've got enough to do. We're not teaching you any guitar, or you'll want to play guitar in the band. And I were. So they were right. But that little bit of piano I knew held me in quite good stead. So
so you wrote Kick Me, though, didn't you?
I wrote Kick Me, I Think I'm Dreaming. And I wrote most of the songs on the album San Francisco International Pop Festival, which was in Santa Clara County. I wrote and produced or co-produced most of the tracks on that. And because I had already been co-producing with the Invaders and John, whatever his name is, he's dead now, sorry John, he was the engineer with Zodiac. But Dave and I really had the final say on what we were going to have on all our records. We were actually that anal about it. But it was on half-track machines, no stereo, no multi-tracks. But when I went to San Francisco, I worked in the studio in San Mateo, where the international airport is for San Francisco. And the owner and the engineer, Fred, he had just got Ampex 8-track. So I was working on 8-track, and the Beatles were still doing 4-track in London with George. And I was working on 8-track, and the only other act in California at the time that was doing it was the Beach Boys, was Brian Wilson. So I was learning, I remember learning, I was so ignorant, you know, and Fred would say, on Kick Me, where do you want the guitar to come from? And I said, oh, in the solo, where it is. And he said, no, do you want it on the left channel or the right channel? And I said, we can choose? He said, oh yeah, you can. I said, what else you can do? I said, we're used to just bouncing and stuff, bouncing tracks in New Zealand to get, effect, and it was all overdubs anyway. He said, no, we can do things like have it coming out of the right side of the right channel of the left and right stereo, and we can bounce the echo onto the left channel, but that will take up 2 tracks. I said, well, let's try not to do that. He said, but no, there's other ways we can do it. And he would explain to me how he could do this. And he would distribute the drums over 3 or 4 tracks so that, you have the kick in the middle. But of course, I learned very quickly, and I said, well, hold on. I want you to still play it back monoraurally to me because I want to hear the overall balance. If some stations played this monoraurally, the stereo will go all to hell anyway. And he said, well, that's what'll happen. If it's too quiet, it'll go down in the mix and go up if it's too loud. And so I learned very quickly how to mix the production so that you could be compatible for both mono and stereo. Whereas in New Zealand, we had to stereo-eyes at the time, just give an effect like we did with Till We Kissed. That just give it such high quality that it sounds like stereo, Oh, it's a shame. But anyway, it was great that we were in those trailblazing days. And then as a soloist, I learned so much. And I kept thinking, God, if Dave Russell was here, we could do this and we could do that. And I kept writing to him in Melbourne.
And then, because you were doing quite well there, and then
yes.
You had your own record label, you had a publishing company.
Yeah,
you're playing with the bands of the day.
I was already starting to own my own. I was already starting to protect the copyrights of what I did and what others did. And I convinced my management firm, Topstar, to go in partnership with me and I named there was Co-Top Music and Cold Star Records. That was from Co-Columbus and Topstar for the record company. And Cold Star, sorry, that was a record company. Co-Top was the publishing company. So, and I learned how to do all that stuff. And I was singing at night. The biggest show we ever did, our first big shows were at a nightclub in Donovan's Reef on the Pacific Ocean, just around past North Beach in San Francisco. And the Turtles were on the show with Ray Clumpers and the Art Collection. And they were number 1 in the States at the time with Happy Together. Flo and Eddie and all those guys, became good friends, and they were great. And I had my Californian band. They were from Santa Clara County, from Los Altos mostly. And they were British freaks, these boys, that I brought into my band, who loved the Hollies and the Beatles and the Stones and stuff. And he was this British guy who could front them. So they loved it, and it was neat. And in fact, 3 of them have just made contact with me again, and it's really quite interesting to actually communicate. Email is such a wonderful thing. Well, we got good earplay in stations like San Jose. Got a bit in San Francisco, but every time I went to one of the TV stations or whatever. Because even though they say they're in a network, they're all, you'll hear Dave Letterman talking about it. I'm a Dave Letterman fan because it reminds me of America. And they have all of these stations who subscribe to the network and add to the network's reach, but they're all syndicated. And they can opt to buy or not buy a show. And so that's why Dave has to please everyone on the network to keep those stringers on. And but I went to San Francisco to what I thought was the CBS or NBC or ABC affiliate, and they didn't know anything. They had just one camera, and it was stationary, and it was on an auto thing, and they would do news that outbreaks, and that was it.
Because you got offered, didn't you get offered some TV shows?
Oh yeah, but I had to produce and direct them and star in them, and I said, no, but I can't actually be in front of the camera and direct. I can produce from the floor while I'm doing the show, but I still need a director to call the shots on what he's going to see and shoot, because I can't be in. I mean, that's how little they knew. And by this time, I'd done a lot of television since I was 17, and I understood a lot of it, and I love the TV medium.
Because you had How did you get given a TV show when you're like 19? Club Columbus.
Club Columbus.
Like, that would never happen now.
No, never.
How did...
An American, once again, timing. The year before, Dinah Lee, as Diane Jacobs, and I had done a show called Time Out for Talent, where I went on and mimed to attract the invaders, and I had recorded.
And this is in Christchurch?
Christchurch, on CHTV3. And then and what I loved about it was the producer and director was an American guy. He'd come directly from the Virgin Islands. And he was seconded to NZBC to actually get local production going. And he was also Fergie Fang, a snake character on children's television, and he had his offside, I forget her name, Julianne or someone, forget them, sorry. And John Nash, his name was. And he just took a shine to me. I think I was the first person he'd sort of met that while he was trying to get things going, that actually had ego. Because I'd already done over 10 years on stage from when I was 6, and I had confidence. I was taught, you prepare hard, work hard, practice, that's the hard work, and then you get on, and the show was fun. So I learned how to get ready, like just for Time Out for Talent. I only had to sing a song. I learned how to lip sync, actually, to mime it. But then I would be very confident and relaxed because that's what I had been taught to do.
So what sort of show was Club Columbus then?
Oh, well, he then said, I want to do a series with you next year, and we'll change the little studio and the alleyway and everything into a nightclub. And I said, what will you call it? He said, Club Columbus. And I said, oh, gee, that's cool. He said, and your band who backed you on Time Out for Talent, they could come in and be... I said, how will you fit us all in? Because the studio was was the newsroom for CHTV3. And, it was about the size you could swing a cat in, I suppose. But he did it in such a way that there was enough kids sitting at little tables. There's a little coffee lounge set up. And the invaders, we had a guest who was my girlfriend at the time. And we'd have another guest too, I think the Four Southerners was the group who springs to mind. And so we started doing some of our repertoire on those only 4 shows, but they were syndicated throughout the country on AKTV2, WNTV1, DNTV3, see? And so Ray Columbus, that's where we had to come up with a name that people would buy into. So that's how Ray Columbus and the Invaders became, because I was the host of the TV show. I should have thought of that before. I didn't think, gee, stroke moment. But actually that's why, because I was the host of the show, so it had to be Ray Columbus and something, the name of the group. But actually we were still a group. But what it opened up for me was new doors, because simultaneous with the group happening in a big way in Australia and New Zealand, I still had this twofold career where I was a TV performer in my own right. Well, that's right. Kevin Moore, the producer and director, and Phil Warren, my dear old friend, late friend, Phil, who had Fuller's Entertainment Agency at the time, Phil contacted me in the States and said, we want you to come back to perform on Come On, be a regular on Come On 68, come back for 6 months. Because Mr. Lee Grant had gone to England and they needed another star to sort of fill that pop thing. And I'd left, as you said, while Till We Kissed and She's a Model was still huge, and I'd gone to California because I'd promised my wife that we would help find her father. And I wanted, of course, I always had that goal in the back of my mind that I'd get the Invaders into America. And it never happened, but it's amazing how things flow on and things happen. And so I came back and became a household name as a TV star, which, just as they say, radio kills the rock and roll star. No, rock and roll killed the radio star. I think TV killed the record star. I could manage it up until about 1970, and that was the last time I think I had a big hit, which was Traveling Singing Man, and People Are People that same year. But I found out very quickly, certainly for me anyway, that anyone pushing 40 ain't going to have a recording career in New Zealand. And it's population, really. There's just not enough people here to sustain a recording company recording you or whatever. Maybe in country there is, but certainly not in rock and roll pop. And the market is definitely young, so there are very few people like Cliff Richard who can keep appealing to young fans. He's remarkable. But anyway, I ended up having this twofold career, and I only intended coming back for 6 months to do Come On, and then going back to the States, because things were starting to happen there too. The last thing I did in San Francisco before coming back was be second billed with Eric Burdon and the New Animals in San Francisco Auditorium, which is the holy grail of auditoriums in San Francisco, and sold out, 2 shows sold out. And
but you came back.
Well, I came back to do, because I was already contracted to do this, and as soon as Come On was over, I was already contracted to do the second series, and then the third. Before I knew it, I had children, and then they went to school, and then they grew up, and then finally my contracts with television ended about early 80s. So it was like 16 years, and meanwhile I'd carried on my love of America and doing things in America by taking New Zealand music over and selling copyrights and songs and trying to get New Zealand music happening, which I did all the time I was then too, and New Zealand itself, because I'm a patriot. But anyway, to answer your question, I mean, John Baker has locked into that whole thing, and I've sort of felt sorry for him in a way, because this is all around the time I've had mini strokes, TIAs, and a major stroke, and it's not John's fault. It's just the fact that I was a heavy smoker when I was a kid that's come back to haunt me. And he's been so encouraging to get me into the studio again. He's trying to get me to, relive that side of my life that people don't know much about. And I'd never go back, for instance. I mean, even he actually asked if we could put the Invaders back together with 2 new guys and tour in New Zealand. I've had a lot of offers since the Legacy Award and the Hall of Fame last year, but to me, that's necrophilia. Jimmy and Wally are dead. We couldn't be a shadow of ourselves, even though Dave and Billy have still got their chops. I'm impaired and ain't going to replace Wally and Jimmy. The history is there, the definitive collection's out, people can see what it's about. But I don't feel the same about Ray Columbus. I don't have that sort of special thing about me personally. So the Invaders, they were sacrosanct. So I've tried so much to work with John, and my health hasn't been that good, and I haven't been that confident in my singing either. He's tried to get me with the situations, doing some other shows here and there. But I just don't feel I'm good enough, and I don't know whether I'll ever do them, to be honest. And I quite like the fact that the songs he likes are a bit obscure. There's a couple of Invaders things that are on that collection that were like Finding Out and whatever, that were R&B things that I wrote that are, that spring over into that era in the States. So. And he's into that also, and so I like the fact that the historian of me, I suppose, likes to be included in it. But if I can't do it justice, I'd rather just stay out of it, But it doesn't mean to say I'll close the door on it if I ever feel that I'm good enough. I see myself, with my blue hat on, my blues hat, and going around, with a couple of sidemen and having fun, like I've seen Bo Diddley and people do in both Australia, New Zealand and America. And I think it's good for the business. For what I loved about Wild Things when we did it was that there was so many, just the get-together alone was fabulous, to be with Peter Nelson and the Castleways and the Underdogs and all these people. But the fans that came out and packed the place, who were just, overjoyed to see us all doing it again. And because it brings back memories and from an era that will probably never, ever come back. And so it was special, I know, and I'm proud to be part of it, but I may just end up being an observer more than a performer eventually. Because I couldn't stand the fact that New Zealanders weren't encouraged to write their own material.
Because you did very early on, which unusually, like if I look at a band like the Chants, they're more interpreters. So that I think they wrote 2 songs.
Yeah, because no one was encouraged to. We'd already fought the battle. Yo-Yo was the first real song written by the guys that went to #1 in New Zealand. So that was a real breakthrough. But you see, it only went top 20 in Australia because they thought it was too rocky and bluesy compared to She's a Mod. And our first records were originals, and I know when I listen to them now, Money Lover, which I wrote for Elvis, God, when I was about 13 or something, and So in Love, I mean, they're very ordinary, and I could see why they would not be picked up, but they were still a bit of history because they were fledgling. We were influenced by the Shadows and Cliff and the Ventures in those days as a group, and we were trying to do our thing and write, our way, and so that was it. So they're there, and in fact they're on the definitive collection, even though they're very underwhelming. I still think it's good that they're there because people can see the progress of how we were trying to write and do our own thing. And I'm incredibly proud of Yo-Yo, and then Now You Shake, which was a #1 EP, because we wrote Now You Shake too, and we opened Big Beat 65 with that, and the Stones watched us every night. 52 concerts watched us open with that and play that song. And Mick told me they would have covered that, except by that time they'd made this pact that they were only going to do Jagger Richards stuff. But they really loved that song, and I would have loved it if...
Because there's a story, the Yardbirds were going to do it at one
The Yardbirds were going to do it. In fact, their manager was on tour with me the following year with Herman's Hermits and Tom Jones, because he managed Herman's Hermits, a Jewish guy. And he said to me, I want that song for the Yardbirds. And I said, that'd be great. He said, but I want sub-publishing. And I'd never ever heard of that before. When we'd given all of our songs to Wally Ransom, who was a lovely guy, he was the last song plugger in New Zealand music, the chief of Southern Pier in Auckland. And so the guy he ran the office for was Chris Vaughan Smith in Sydney, who was a dork. I'm sorry, but he was. And I know you're gone too now, Chris, but I still think it. And I phoned him and said, the Yardbirds want to cover Now You Shake, which was a #1 EP in New Zealand, and it was doing quite well in Australia. But, it would have been huge. This is after Shapes of Things. And I said, he said, well, tell them to do it. That's the way he talked, Well, what's stopping them? I said, well, their manager wants sub-publishing. Do you know what that is? He said, Southern Pier don't sub-publish with anyone. And I said, what is it? He said, that's when you share, we have to give some points. And I said, but why not share a massive worldwide hit? Then retain, why be closed and just get a few points you have all the points for a minor hit? Seems stupid. I love the idea. Southern Pier won't sub-publish. So anyway, I had to tell the guy with the Yardbirds note. And I met Ralph Pear many years later and told him that story, and he said, I'm sorry that Chris Vaughan's gone, Smith's gone, he said, but I'm also sorry he told you that. We would have sub-published. In America, we do that. And I said, well, he was a real anal guy. I said he was like a government department worker. That's what he always looked like. That's what he sounded like. And I don't know why you ever gave him the publishing for Australasia. I said Wally Ransom was the guy, and you could do deals with him. And that's what, from the day that Chris told me that, I retained all my publishing forever. And I still do. And it was too late, of course, to do it with the Invaders. because we'd signed them over to Wally because he was a dear friend. But from then on, anything I did in Australia, and that's why I formed COTOP and Cold Star, I started protecting, and I came back to New Zealand, and everyone I saw, I would say, protect your copyrights. And even when New Zealand On Air was being set up, I said, make sure that if you're going to, I remember saying to Brendan Smythe, if you're going to do these deals where you're going to fund New Zealand music, that the original writers retain their copyrights. And you could even probably get a piece of the action on them until the money, the invested, is returned. I mean, that was all trailblazing stuff, not just for me, but it was for the industry to, lock into all that sort of stuff. And I mean, basically, New Zealand On Air is sort of a high risk investment bank, really, merchant bank in a way, and that was the way it was seen by government people at the time. And it was true. But what a fabulous job they've done. And do we now cover everything with your question?
I was going to ask you about your third. Is it your third album? Original Numbers? Is that the third album? Second album?
Well, it was sort of third, really, because the Greatest Hits Till We Kissed album came out. So yeah, it was really the second.
You guys were making that as
we broke up, as the guys left, and I broke. As soon as it happened, I got the agent to phone the Star, I think it was, and tell them Ray Columbus and the Invaders have split up, because I didn't want. Typical. I see. I'm showing I'm anal here, or was at the time. I wanted to make sure that Billy and Jimmy couldn't, make an announcement they were leaving the Invaders to go. I felt they were such an integral part of the group that I didn't even think of replacing them. I thought, we're one of the most admired groups in the world. I mean, the Stones loved us. Dave Clark 5 thought we were brilliant. It was just, incredible to think that we were split up. But I was determined to say that's what happened rather than say two guys left. So, but what I should have done, now I know, what I should have done was replace them, and we should have carried on, just like Jagger did with Brian when he died, and they just replaced people. And we should have done it because I found out the hard way, which was good for me, that as long as I sang the hits from then on and had guys in a group, and sometimes it was Dave and Wally until Wally went and played for Peter Nelson internationally, and I did the dances, the fans were happy. And that goes on today. I mean, I'm still, if I can do She's a Model, Till We Kissed, I could not do those songs, but fans will come out of the woodwork for it. And but I learned that actually I could have replaced them, and I shouldn't have been so anal about it. And so, but I think the group were my baby. I was so proud of the 4 individual guys, and we were all teenagers together, and I just couldn't envisage not having Billy or Jimmy in the band. I think that was the truth. Anyway, so...
But you made this record, Original Numbers, which is...
we got halfway through it, and all original songs, and I convinced Elder that we wanted to do that. And then I had to finish writing the songs, and that's why I ended up getting Billy before he left to help with a couple, and before he left town, and Dave and Wally, who really was so shy, he didn't do much besides play brilliantly, but he actually co-wrote a couple of things with me, and I finally got the bare bones of the songs, and that's why on one of them there's only a piano and things like that, because, to finish off the album, we had to sort of mix and match as much as we could, and studio time wasn't a problem, because otherwise the album would have been shelved. But I was determined to finish it off, and I'm very proud of Original Numbers, and I'm so pleased. Thank you, Mr. Bollinger, for it was great, Nick, to actually admit that it was New Zealand's first original album, because I'd been working toward that since I was 13 to write and record New Zealand music and to see other people do it. And not to do what NZBC said to me when I was first on an interview when I Want to Be Your Man came out. When we first did Money Lover and now So in Love, the guy said, "Don't be a big head, Ray. don't try and write your own songs. Do what everyone else does and do covers. I mean, I just thought that was just shocking. I said, no way, man. But anyway, and so She's a Mod was not a cover. It was a demo we got from England, from Terry Beale. And we did the first commercial recording of it. But anyway, Billy found the original acetate of us doing that. And we got an acetate of the original version that demo by Terry Beale in Liverpool for it. And so it was, so we ended up, because we were involved with Jack Argent, he would slip me all the latest recordings by the Beatles. So because besides playing our own music, we were also playing covers at Surf City and Beach House. So, and if say it was Help or any one of the great songs by the Beatles, at midnight, and the publishers would control, like Jack would control, look at this is my digital thing because of my stroke, I actually do. So if I look like a crazy Italian, I am. This is how I can sort of make my brain work. At midnight, the publisher would say, this record is embargoed until midnight on Thursday night, or Wednesday night, or whenever it was. Usually it was a weeknight. And you could turn the dial between, say, the 5 or 6 radio stations in Sydney. At midnight, it would go, can't buy me love. You know, you could actually count on it. But also, at the same time at Surf City, Ray Columbus and the Invaders were doing at midnight, can't buy me. I've got to be a smart ass guy when I think about it. But, you know, we wanted to be happening, and we wanted to be ahead of everyone else. And it drove me and drove them, and there was never an argument about it. And we did that for so many of the Beatles' smash hits. And the funny thing is that by the time She's a Mod came out, I think the Beatles had 5 tracks in the top 10. We were number 1. Roy Orbison had 1. Have I the Right by the Honeycomb was 1. I think that was it. And the Beatles were the rest. So, you know, it was phenomenal. And I remember Merv Smith, who was number 1 in breakfast in the country at the time, playing the Beatles version off the album of I Want to Be a Man, and cutting hours in and out, saying, listen, Ray Columbus and the Invaders just sound like the Beatles. Aren't they great? I mean, that was, you had to prove you could be the same or as good to impress people. And that was how cover versions always were accepted in this country. And then it's so wonderful now to actually know and hear and see and celebrate the fact that people can come out like Don McGlashan and do Anchor Me and do their own records, and people say, that's a bloody good record, you know, and don't worry about the fact that it's not a sin to do an original song anymore. We've come of age.
How did you find the Mint Chicks doing She's a Mod?
Oh, I thought it was great, and I was fully supportive of them, and I was so thrilled when they left their multinational company, and now they own what they're doing. I think was inspired, and I contacted Ruben, and I ran into his mum the other day. I think it's great. I love the fact that the Invaders and I got the Legacy Award, and I think leaving a legacy is exactly that. And now the Mint Chicks recorded something we did and did their version of it and had fun doing it. And I'm sorry that they didn't get more action in Australia. I thought they probably could with a new, younger audience. Even though the history of the record is still huge over there, there's a whole new audience that would love those guys because they look great. They're mod, they're cool, and they're damn good. And yeah, I was very proud of them.
That was a big night.
The doomed 1976.
So I'll leave you that as well, because there's some good reading in there.
All right, Glenn, oh, thank you very much for that. Now, do you want to? I'd like you to listen to.
Yes, let's put that
Made
on.
Me, Made You, because
Let's put that
because it is you'll hear how I think the chants. I'm sure they probably listened to the Invaders and I thought I love that sound, and maybe that talked them into getting a jazz Fender guitar or whatever they did. Yeah, listen to this. Oh, that's Orbie Lee. That's the one we wrote. Wally and I wrote this. I believe.
So this is the Roy Orbison one, eh?
Yep, Orbie Lee. I missed you while you were gone. And it's got a country lick, rockabilly lick, because did you hear the tremolo guitar?
That was he, Roy Orbison.
Great, lovely guy. And his dad, Orbie Lee, was a lovely guy. Listen to Wally. That's Billy. Now Wally's. He was the fast guy. Dave was always the riff man and played great solos, but now and again Wally did these brilliant jazzy blues solos. Before he died, he had taught himself all the saxes and flute. This song is all about what Orbie told us about Roy. So we integrated it into... Oh yeah, Orbie was Roy's tour manager.
Did he ever take the glasses off?
No, I believe it's because he was albino and they were pink. We were in sunbathing situations once at a hotel, and even then he didn't take them off. And I think his hair was dyed black and he had the whitest skin I've ever seen. I think he's albino, because he was a genius too, and that goes hand in hand with albinos. Now, if you could do Made You, because...
Yes, so hold on. I think that's something. Other one then, is it? What track?
It was number 9 on number...
I think we've got the wrong one in there somehow.
No, I think you got the white one. You got the blue one.
Oh,
Have
you
you got...
do 12. That's...
Oh, sorry.
Here we go.
Oh, of course. Listen to how fast Wally plays guitar. And the glassy sound sounds like Chance R&B, huh? A gasser, that's a fact. So Dave's doing the riffy thing. Bum, 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 bum.
Were you guys influenced by the British sound, the sort of the mid-60s R&B thing that happened in England?
Oh, we were part of it, I think, and we didn't even know it. We were doing a British version of R&B. Listen to the speed of the solo that Wally plays. Jeez. And that's the fastest guitar playing on earth at the time. And he never looked at his guitar. He just went... When I moved to San Francisco and everyone was talking about Michael Broomfield being the fastest guitarist on the planet, I went and saw him and I said, Wally's got to eat him. The ending is phenomenal. Oh, Jesus. Incredible, man. Isn't that incredible? Well, I learned when I was about 15 when I went to Nelson with my entourage for the Christmas break, you know, with looking for girls, of course. Great place to go to the beach there at Nelson for Christmas, and one of them was driving the car, and there was 5 of us, I think. And one night I got up. They always encouraged me. I was with the downbeats. I had my fledgling group still going, and they always encouraged me to get up and sing. And I never did, but this particular night was a New Year's Eve thing in Nelson Hall somewhere. And they all right, well, we've arranged, we talked to the band leader and told me that you're good and get up and sing. Now, I'd already been drinking with the guys for half the day. The last time we ever did, I've got to tell you. And I thought I went great guns and did brilliantly. And the next morning, they were all very quiet. And we were getting toast or cereal or something. And one of them just said to me, Ray, I don't think you should drink and sing again. I said, why, man? I was having a ball. He said, you thought you were, but you were awful. You were bloody awful. You weren't singing any good and you went way over the top. And so ever since then, I never drink and sing. And that way I was 15.
Wow, that's